Stand by SOT1.
Standing.
10 seconds. Ready, rollin'. Ready, SOT1.
Ready.
In 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll in.
From legendary Uncle Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you damn independent contractors. And now, here's this week's edition of Work Comp Matters.
And it is 12 noon straight up on June 3rd. We have police sirens in the background. Don't know if you're picking it up there, but welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. My name is Steve Appell, and we are, of course, brought to you by the workcompcentral.com. If you want the number one location for workers' compensation in both California and around the United States, check out the workcompcentral.com. They've got a free 7-day offer. And if you want to pick up their services, I have them. You should too. It's only $1 a day. Work Comp Matters is also brought to you by A1 Law, number one computer management system, 818-357-4120 for your no strings attached money back guarantee. $1 a day. A1 Law. Good afternoon, everybody. As usual, I'm joined by the madman across the pond, John Scalia, as well as the Chief of Staff, Dr. Mike Zyma. And got to give mucho thanks and kudos to Scott Walton of Uncle Studios. Scott, a note, we are live and going well. It's done exactly the way it's supposed to be. And for those of you that might see the new window here live, it's the old window it's a bunch of technical stuff that I hate to deal with, but it looks like we just turned the corner on the new generation of Work Comp Matters. And that being said, I want to go ahead and get to some news right away. The Minnesota Attorney General's office has finished its initial review of evidence in the investigation of 4 former Minneapolis police officers involved in the killing of George Floyd. And apparently, according to CNN, has rendered a decision regarding additional charges for all 4 officers. That decision, according to CNN, is scheduled to happen this afternoon. Speaking of privacy, Google was sued on Tuesday in a proposed class action lawsuit accusing the internet search company of illegally invading the privacy of millions of users by pervasively tracking their internet use through browsers set in private mode. The lawsuit seeks at least $5 billion, accusing the Alphabet company unit of surreptitiously. John, how do you pronounce that? Surreptitiously?
Surreptitiously.
Surreptitiously. Thank you, John.
Excellent.
Excellent. The lawsuit accuses Alphabet Inc. unit of accusing them of collecting information. Collecting information about what people view online and where they browse, despite their using what Google calls incognito mode. According to the complaint filed in federal court in San Jose, California, Google gathers data through their Google Analytics, Google Ad Manager, and other applications and website plugins, including smartphone apps, regardless of whether users click on Google-supported ads. This helps Google learn all the good stuff about not only who's using it, but their friends and family. And the complaint specifically says, quote, potentially embarrassing things they search for online. Wonder what that is. Jose Castaneda, a Google spokesman, said the Mountain View, California-based company will defend itself vigorously against the claims. The case is called Brown et al. Versus Google et al. U.S. District Court, Northern District of California, number 20-3664. And last but not least, for one of my news stories, and then we'll get to Mike and then John, I want to give a shout out and much thanks to Gregory Grindberg, Grindberg. He runs an online thing, and he came out with something this morning essentially titled WCAB, Call Me Please. And what does that mean? Not much, really, except the WCAB announced last week that the telephonic appearance procedures will continue through the month of June. Electronic filings will continue as before as well. The one notable exception is that the WCAB will now allow up to 3 lien conferences per judge's calendar session per day. Once those slots are filled up, the remaining lien conferences will be continued. From my own experience, and again, this is Gregory Grindberg speaking, from my own experience, it looks like the hearings are becoming fairly streamlined. The attorneys and hearing representatives appear to be getting pretty comfortable with appearing and addressing issues over the phone. The judges have been saint-like. Oh, come on, Mr. Grindberg, get off your knees, okay? The judges have been saint-like in their patience and flexibility to make the technology work, and there is a growing trend of preparing in advance of the actual hearing. And in all seriousness, the judges, the workers' compensation judges, have been very patient. They've been very tolerant, and all of the practitioners and officers of the court have been able to pare down their issues to the main issues at hand. This is me talking now. Back to Mr. Grindberg. Will this become the norm? Will we limit board appearances to live testimony under oath and conduct all other hearings by phone? If that's the case, we will also see the pooling. Will we also see the pooling of judges statewide? Will we see impacted boards getting assistance for status conference and MSCs from boards with more availability? The root of the necessity for these changes is unfortunate, of course, but not unlike a cow kicking over a lantern and causing the need to modernize the city. Perhaps this innovation will make practice and resolution of workers' compensation cases faster, more efficient, and at least as to the litigation aspect, less costly. So, dear readers, what do you think? When we all feel comfortable drinking Coronas again, shall we return to the hustle and bustle of the WCAB, or will we live out our nightmares of telephonically going to court in our underwear? Your humble blogger is looking forward to see what the future brings. Happy Wednesday, and that's from Gregory Grindberg. That's my initial rant. Now I'll go to my chief of staff, Mike Zyma.
Well, this is a fight-on story. USC will bring students back to campus for the fall semester amid the coronavirus crisis, with several safety measures that include both online and in-person classes, more spacing in dorms, and testing for COVID-19. President Carol L. Folt, F-O-L-T, announced Tuesday night. The highly anticipated decision was certain to hearten many students, many of whom found online learning alienating, and their families who balked at paying USC's $58,000 annual tuition and fees for classes on computers. Some students, like others throughout the country, were considering taking a gap year if USC did not resume in-person classes. And you know, guys, I just wonder what other universities, what their plans are. What is UC plan? What is California State Universities? what is their plan for coming out of this virus debacle? But this is the first story I've seen by a particular university as to how they plan on dealing with this. I imagine that there's going to be fewer people in classes. John, what do you think?
Yeah, there's no doubt there has to be fewer people because they're going to maintain the physical distancing that's required. So obviously that reduces the number of students. I don't think there's any, health issues aside, which obviously are the primary concern, I don't think there's any substitute for in-person learning or in-person courtroom appearances. We humans are, we're wired for personal contact, and we're wired for doing business that way. And I don't think any amount of technology is going to replace our human wiring.
Well, John, that's a good point. However, if one party files for a status conference, I see no problem doing it by phone. And in fact, court call has been going on for years. Now, if we're talking about testimony by witnesses on the record, that is never going to happen as far as I'm concerned over the phone. But what's wrong with having a status conference by phone?
Let me give you a quick note on that. There'll never be testimony by phone. When I started practicing, all the doctor testimony was taken in person. And now it's taken by deposition, which isn't quite by phone, but it's very close. And I don't like it. I never did like it. I think there's a huge difference between in-person and not in-person.
I agree with you. However, doctor testimony, as you well know, their direct examination is their report, which is why it's more commonly called a cross-ex or a cross-examination when their depo is taking, because essentially you're cross-examining the doctor based on his direct testimony through the report.
Okay, but it's done by deposition rather than in person. I remember when the AMEs would schedule a whole day of testimony. They made a lot of money because they would have 10 cases. So it was no problem for them. And a lot of them, most of them didn't even go to trial or testimony. But when you needed the testimony, there is no substitute for the BDI test. There's no substitute for being, the courtroom is my home court. That's my home base. And there's a huge difference between letting a doctor give testimony in his comfortable office or having him on the witness stand where he knows that's my home.
No, you're 100% correct. However, good, bad, or indifferent, as you know, we have a rule of practice and procedure that medical reports are preferred and doctors testifying in court for the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board, in so many words, is not preferred.
Yeah, I get that. And as I've said, and I know you guys can't say this because you exist down there and you're in person, but you know me, I said it when I was there. That rule exists because judges got lazy and they decided that it was a lot easier to have the attorneys go out and do it and not have to go on the record, not have to make a summary, not have to go to all the work that in-person testimony entails. And as a result, they damaged our trade.
Hang on, Mike. Hang on, Mike. I want to respond, and then you can. John, I will agree with you that some judges I have experienced are lazy. The majority of judges that I know are not. But I don't think that was the main reason why this was done. But certainly it could be a contributing factor. But I believe that the main reason it was done is because in workers' compensation, the defendant insurance company, there goes the siren again, the defendant insurance company is required to pay for all reasonable discovery costs. If either party has to subpoena a doctor to come down to court, basically book his entire day, and it gets continued once or twice, that defendant is going to be shelling out tens of thousands of dollars for a doctor where it might even testify. And I would say the main reason for this rule is because defendants got together and said, we want to save ourselves a couple of bucks. and let's put the direct examination on paper. John, I'm sure you want to respond, but Mike's been waiting. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I was just going to say, I consider myself a pretty old guy, but even I don't remember when it was usual and customary for physicians to give live testimony at the board. But I want to ask John. John, did I hear you correctly? Did you say the BDI test?
Yes.
Huh. Can you give just a quick definition of that? I think I know what it is, but
Yeah, basically it's when you make the witness, squirm and squint and change his focus and start sweating. I mean, when he looks, basically, it usually isn't that dramatic, but when a witness starts to feel really uncomfortable because they realize that the testimony they want to give is being destroyed.
Yeah, basically, John gives him the BDI, and without saying it, he goes, "You're full of Shiite."
and to answer your thing, Steve, in general, because I represented insurance companies for many years, and by and large, doctor testimony always got priority from the judges. I can't remember, the only time I remember a doctor testimony being put off is when I represented a lien claimant chiropractor, and we got 3 or 4 continuances. But when it was actually set for the doctor's testimony, the judges always gave it priority, and it always happened.
My name is Steve Appell. You're dialed into WorkCompmatters. We are brought to you by the workcompcentral.com. If you want the #1 location for workers' compensation in both California and around the United States, check out the workcompcentral.com. They've got a free 7-day offer. And if you want to pick up their services, I have them. You should too. It's only $1 a day. WorkCompmatters is also brought to you by A1 Law, #1 computer management system, A1-833-574-4120 for your no strings attached, money back guaranteed, $1 a day. A1 Law. Mike, you got, or I'm sorry, it's John's up. John, have you got a segment? Did you want to talk about how journalism has been debased and gone downhill in the past 30 years, or it's up to you, pal?
Well, I can talk about that. I wasn't going to do that as a segment, but if you want, I can talk about
John,
that.
you can talk about whatever you want. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, what I was going to do yesterday, and I decided I'd rather tell a funny story because everything we talk about is usually pretty serious. But what I was going to talk about yesterday was the President of the United States using the Bible and a church as photo ops. I mean, it's revolting. The other thing about it is, Trump does have advisors. I mean, he has people who can read and write, which are qualities I don't think he has. So he could have gone to them and he could have said, well, I'm going to take this Bible and I'm going to stand in front of an Episcopal church. What do you think? And since he's got people who can read and write, they would have told him, well, do you realize the Episcopal church is against almost everything your fundamentalist Christians are for? Do you realize the Episcopal church believes in women's reproductive rights? Do you realize that they have women bishops? Do you realize that they are progressives on all the social issues? And when you stand up there with the Bible, where lots of the people in the pews in the Episcopal church consider the 10 Commandments, the 10 suggestions, do you realize all that? And do you realize that once you do that, all the bishops in the Episcopal church, including, oh my God, female bishops, are going to come down like a ton of bricks on you? I mean, it was absolutely revolting. The other interesting thing about it, afterward, and by the way, all the Episcopal hierarchy came down on him like a ton of bricks. I can speak with some authority about this because I was an Episcopalian for like 30 years. I did almost everything in the church that you can do in the church, and I know what the church's stand is on political, or at least on human rights, and they're very liberal. So it was a ridiculous mistake for him to make. He cleared out peaceful demonstrators who were still demonstrating while the time was allowed. He had pellets fired at them, tear gas, so he could clear out a path so he could get in front of the church. The other thing, though, is it ended on a comedy routine because one of the reporters asked him, they said, "Is that your Bible?" And Trump's answer was, "It's a Bible." So, I mean, it was ridiculous. It was like right out of Saturday Night Live.
It looked to me like it could be a dictionary or something.
No, it was a Bible.
I've read a lot of comments about Trump and his Bible, and this is my thought. I couldn't care less whether or not he was carrying the Bible. I care even more or less if he reads the Bible. My concern, what bothered me, and I was thoroughly disgusted, was that the Secret Service, the FBI, whoever it was, when he took his walk, preceding the walk, they went ahead and sprayed rubber bullets and tear gas or pepper spray to people that were just sitting there or standing there doing nothing. And that I felt very bad about.
Well, then also,
my point.
Also,
let me just say,
excuse me. Also, he disavowed later any knowledge of that having taken place. I mean, I'm sure he for sure found out about it later, but I don't believe that he didn't know the cops were going to do that. But later,
they were ordered to. William Barr, Attorney General Barr, ordered them to do it. They were ordered to do it by Attorney General Barr.
Well, then, do you think that Trump didn't know they were going to do that?
Of course, he knew. He was trying to overcome the optics of hiding in his rat tunnel the day before.
Well, you heard what he said about that, right? Did you hear, John?
No, I assume he said they ordered me to go down there or something.
Yeah, it's even better than that. You're going to love it. He said that he just went down there to check it out. To inspect it.
That's funny. No, my point about the Bible was, look, I am not particularly, if you read my book, The Philosophy of Common Sense, I rip into organized religion, okay? And I rip into lots of the Bible. But the point is, it's not a prop. I mean, when you take people's beliefs and you try to make it a prop, that is just wrong. I'm sorry.
It cheapens it.
Well, it's more than that. It's just wrong. It's indecent. I mean, you're taking people's holy scripture and making it a television prop. I mean, come on, that's just bad.
Yeah.
I mean, what if you had done the same thing with the Quran? What if you had done the same thing? What if you had done the same thing with the Talmud? I mean, come on, it's absurd.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. No, I'm just kidding. California is one of about 20 states where new cases of COVID-19 are increasing over the past 5 days, according to Johns Hopkins University. A Los Angeles Times analysis shows the number of weekly cases in California continues to rise, exceeding 17,000 last week for the first time in the pandemic. There were nearly 10,000 alone in Los Angeles County alone last week, according to the analysis. Los Angeles County and the Southland remain the California epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic, but there have been some troubling increases in reported disease in some Bay Area counties. Officials are not sure whether the new cases reflect a larger spike as the economy reopens or the result of increasing testing, or perhaps a combination of both. I'm here to tell you right now, it's because of more testing. Just my opinion, John. Just my opinion.
That very well could be. I mean, it's obvious they don't know what it is, whether it's that or whether it's another wave or whatever. But I mean, it's clear the more you test, the more you find out a lot of people have been infected. So the real question then becomes, okay, how serious is it now?
Mike, how about another news story? Guys, we got a couple of minutes left.
Okay, I'd like to lay a foundation, a bit of a foundation. I think we're in what I'd call a negative karma vacuum. But one of the problems with a negative karma vacuum is that it could always get worse. And I've been thinking in the back of my mind, what if in shaky Southern California we get a 7.0? That would be like the cherry on top. But there is
I think that would be the perfect storm, but please continue.
Yes, something like that. But mosquitoes infected with West Nile virus, were discovered in Palm Desert, officials announced Monday. The infected, and this is all we need, guys, right? The infected mosquitoes were collected from two traps, one near the Shadow Mountain Golf Club on Portola Avenue, and the other near Highway 74 and Mesa View Drive. The Coachella Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District reported, quote, just one bite from an infected mosquito can make a person sick, end quote, said Tammy Gordon, a district spokesman. Quote, we need everyone to cover up and use repellent at dawn and dusk when mosquitoes are the most active, end quote. So that's another thing we got to worry about.
John, any closing thoughts or burning desires?
Well, I will comment on the thing you sent me, the report of the Rand Corporation on biased news, if you want.
Yeah, just to lay a foundation, before yesterday's show, John and I and Mike were talking about the degradation of news and journalism and how it's gone downhill in 30 days. And then we briefly mentioned it on the show. And John asked if I could give one example, and I couldn't think of one on the show. And then after the show, when I was at lunch, I sent John a study by not the Wall Street Journal, but
no, it's by the
Rand
Corporation.
Well, it was done by the Rand Corporation and
Hello? Are you there?
There's a public safety alert, John. Hold on.
tomorrow. And it's interesting to note that our curfew yesterday was about 5 or 6 o'clock. And the day before, it was 4 o'clock. And so the curfews are getting later and later, but there is a countywide curfew. So anyways, this was done by the Rand Corporation, but it was reported by a division of the Wall Street Journal. And John, we got like 3 minutes tops. So go ahead.
Yeah, just basically, I think it confirmed what I was saying, which is that the most reliable and the least changed outlets were mainline print. And they specifically talked about New York Times, Washington Post, and St. Louis Post-Dispatch. They said they had been degraded less than any other medium. So I think the mainline medium is still the most reliable. And specifically, they recommended AP and Reuters-Thompson as being pretty reliable. Now, just a brief history, and I'm just going to be brief because we don't have much time. You have to understand the history of cable news. Cable news didn't exist a long time ago. And what happened was, in fact, the news was sort of relegated to a 15-minute slot on local stations when some of them finally realized, hey, you know, it doesn't cost us anything to do this local news, and we make a lot of money on it. So they started expanding it. And then somebody came up with the idea of, well, why don't we have news all the time? And basically, Fox started the whole thing, and Fox realized that they could make a lot of money if they had attractive talking heads spewing right-wing lines on all kinds of things. And so they set a model, which the other networks have to follow. Well, they don't have to, but they followed because Fox became number one. So, of course, I mean, the business model was that we're going to give you slanted news because that's the kind of viewership we want. And so the report does say that the most reliable, the least affected, are the print media and Reuters-Thompson. And by the way, it was financed, I believe, by the Wall Street Journal. And interestingly enough, since it's Rand, they're open about their methodology. And their methodology, I have some complaints about, but I don't think we have enough time for me to go into that. So the point is that, you know, and the other thing is, of course, they only talked about U.S. media. So they didn't talk about BBC. They didn't talk about Al Jazeera, just the stuff you guys get in the States. So that's it. You know, I think by and large, it confirmed what I was saying.
And one thing that I'm sure John knows, but he did not say, was that traditionally the news departments of the major networks were money losers. Then all of a sudden, in the late 1900s, very, very early 2000s, reality television started to become the big thing, where cost consistently less money to produce, and therefore the revenues were considerably higher. And what used to be losing money news turned into money-making news, but the way that they had to make the money was in some way, shape, or form to make it slightly or a lot more entertaining, which is why prior to 30 years ago, you hardly saw any, if not no, reality TV at all. And now reality TV is almost the norm. And I agree. 30 years ago, I said yesterday, the gold standard when he left in 1980, 81 was Walter Cronkite. But the gold standard now, and potentially, then, and still now, was AP, Associated Press, and UPI, United Press International. But if we want, we can talk more about it. And we are not only out of time, we are over time. For the madman across the water, John Scalia, for my chief of staff, Dr. Mike Zyma, Scott Walton of Uncle Studio, and all the good people back at WorkCompCentral, my name is Steve Appell. We'll see you again tomorrow at noon for another edition of Work Comp Matters.